Good afternoon. I'm Demetrius Fisher. The subject that I want to bring to the board today is employees with disabilities. And I want to challenge you to think for a second, to put yourselves in the shoes of someone with a possible disability, what they face and what they have to go through in a single day. This chart I have on the board now is from the labor market of American Institute for Research, and it shows out of the working force of the United States how many workers have visual or hearing difficulties versus out of the 45% you have 26% ambulatory difficulties using wheelchairs or other ambulatory devices, 17% out of 22. Cognitive difficulties out of 21, 15%. And self-care difficulties, 14%, you have 8 out of the 14, which shows you it's a close proximity of American workers with disabilities that are in our workforce. So do we take the opportunity to even consider what that is like trying to gain gainful employment with a disability? First, the definition of disability as defined by the Americans with Disabilities Act is a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, a person who has a history or record of such an impairment, or a person who is perceived by others as having such an impairment. So first of all, as a company, you should recognize what a disability really is. Because a lot of times we talk about disabled or disabilities in the wrong sense. You know, a limp is not necessarily a disability. Something that's causing that person not to be whole is to be considered a disability, or they've been diagnosed by a licensed healthcare provider as to having a disability of some type. The first issue of concern faced by all people with disabilities is obviously finding that gainful employment. So we take for granted that you see that person in the wheelchair, you see that parking space even where a person with disability is supposed to be obligated to park closer. Sometimes we as whole people take advantage of that situation by trying to park closer, but do we really stop and think what that position is really for that person that actually has a disability? There's an office in the United States Department of Labor called the Office of Disability Policy Enforcement. This office is in place to order advocates for people with disabilities. So even the government has recognized that there's a true need for someone to have a voice for personnel, people, employees with disabilities. It says they create and encourage policies that ensure there are meaningful jobs that fit the needs of a disabled person while creating an environment that makes the employee feel equal despite their disability. The EEOC has gone on with the Americans with Disabilities Act to also have protection. If there's a job that person can do, the company has to provide reasonable accommodation for that person in order to do that job. All those are rights that's protected by the government for employees with disabilities. Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act covers state and local government activities and public transportation. So once you apply for a job as a disabled person, the next obstacle is how do you get there? As I noticed here, out of this 17% with ambulatory difficulties, whether it's a walker, whether it's a wheelchair, whether it's a mechanical wheelchair, or with a battery, how when they make it to that interview and they get hired, now they got another obstacle to overcome, and that's how do I get there? Are you going to have ramps and walkways? So I challenge you to go out in society, in public, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's your children's school or your church, or even where we work today. Do we have proper accommodations for those that may show up at our facility with disabilities? The issue of public transportation will be used for the purpose of this report. Once a qualified candidate has landed a job, again, you got to get there, and that's a big obstacle. Think about it. When you wake up every day, you may have a routine you go through. You get up, brush your teeth, wash your hair, take a shower, go out and stick your key in your car. It's not that simple for people with disabilities. So please consider that. Title III of the Americans with Disabilities Act also covers public accommodation. Public accommodation is another issue of concern. So, okay, now you've made the trip to the job. When you get to the door, can you open the door with reasonable access to the facility? Are there handrails? Are there, again, I mentioned ramps. What happens now that you get there? Are people going to stand around and laugh and look at this guy, look at this lady, what are they doing? You know, we take it for granted. We may think it's a comical situation when that person's actually struggling, trying to make entry into the place where the job is located. So please take these things into concern when you're out in public life and you are assessing churches, restaurants, places of business. The next time it's a doorknob turn, is it friendly for a person from a wheelchair where they can reach it and pull it out or push it in, however that should be with the person with disabilities. These should take concern listed above. These things only cover a small part of what a person with disabilities have to go through. And as I move on, I just want to point out here, workers with disabilities by record earn less than their peers. So that's another concern. The person doesn't have the qualifications and skills to do the job, but it's unfortunate by studies, as you can see here with a high school diploma, that person without a disability earns $29,471 versus $22,966 for a person with disabilities. And that trend seems to continue even with degrees of associate, bachelor's, or even a master's level. So that's something that we should get behind. We should stand behind those people and advocate equal pay. If you can do the same job, disability or not, you should get the same pay. So please, in your life, as I wrote here, it's the employees with disabilities. It says it all. I think it's important for any organization to talk to their personnel and to train their employees to be respectful of those that may have disabilities and come to an understanding of the fairness in the treatment of these in the facilities and the accommodation that's provided for those with disabilities. Again, my name is Demetrius Fisher. Employees with disabilities is important to me, and I hope it becomes important to you. Thank you.